The bus dropped me off just before sunset. The air smelled like rain and rust and something else, something unfamiliar. I stood there with my suitcase at my feet watching the sky fade from gold to gray, and I told myself I was home, but even that word felt strange on my tongue. My town looked smaller than before, quieter too, the kind of quiet that makes your heart tighten because you know it's not peace, it's warning. I started walking down the old gravel road, the same one I had walked 100 times before, each step a memory pressing against my chest. When I reached my building, I noticed the paint on the door was different, a brighter color that didn't belong. My name was missing from the mailbox. The paper label I had written by hand was gone, replaced with something neat and typed. I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe the caretaker had changed it while I was away, but then I saw the curtains in my window, floral white, not mine. My hand shook when I reached for the keys. They didn't fit the lock. I turned them again, harder, still wrong. I stood there for a long time with the keys digging into my palm and the streetlight humming above my head. A woman opened the door from inside. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "Can I help you?" she said. I swallowed the lump in my throat and told her, "This is my apartment. I live here. I've lived here for 20 years. She looked at me kindly, the kind of kindness people use when they don't know what else to do. She said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I bought this place 2 weeks ago from a Mrs. Miller, your daughter-in-law, I believe." For a moment everything went quiet, the sound of the cars, the wind, the world itself, it all stopped. I couldn't speak, I couldn't even breathe. I just stared at the doorway, at the space that used to be my home. She asked if I was all right. I nodded, though I wasn't. She said she could call someone, maybe my family. I said no thank you, my voice small cracked. I walked away, the road stretching endlessly ahead, every step heavier than the last. I didn't cry, not yet. I was too stunned, too empty. I went to the small diner near the bus stop, ordered coffee. Even though my hands were trembling too much to hold the cup, I sat there until the lights dimmed and the waitress began wiping tables. She asked if I had a place to go and I said I used to. That night I slept in a cheap motel room, the kind that smells like cigarettes and old secrets. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling fan turning slow and uneven, and I tried to remember when my son stopped calling me mom and started calling me only when she was near. I thought of the day I gave her the spare keys just for emergencies. She had smiled so sweetly, her hand soft, her voice soft too, saying, "Don't worry, mom, we'll take care of everything." I didn't know she meant it like that. The next morning I walked to the town office. I asked for the property records. The clerk printed them and handed them to me. And there it was, her name written in neat black letters on the deed. My apartment, my life, sold for a number that meant nothing compared to what it held inside. I felt something rise in me then, not anger, not yet, but something sharper, colder, the kind of strength that only comes when a person has nothing left to lose. I folded the paper carefully and said thank you. Then I walked out into the bright morning sunlight and made a promise to myself. I would not beg, I would not break, I would find out how she did it, and when I did, the truth would burn brighter than any lie she ever told. Woke before the sun that morning. The air was still heavy from rain, the sky the color of ash, and I told myself today I would not cry, today I would start to understand. The clerk at the records office had told me the sale had gone through with all the right papers, notarized signatures, clean, every line perfect, too perfect. I knew she couldn't have done it alone. Walked through town, the streets waking, slow, coffee brewing somewhere, someone watering flowers, the smell of wet soil rising. I passed the old library where I used to take my son when he was little, back when he still believed in me, back when I still believed he always would. Inside I asked the librarian if I could see the local newspaper archives. She smiled, the same gentle small town smile I'd seen 1,000 times, and said, "Of course, honey, what are you looking for?" I told her just something recent about property sales. She led me to the computer, showed me how to search. It didn't take long. There it was in black and white, property at 42 Maple Avenue, sold to a young couple, cash offer, quick sale from private owner, contact listed as family representative. Family representative. Those words echoed like a bell. She had used my son's signature to his name right beside hers. The world swayed for a moment. I closed my eyes and saw his face, the boy who once hugged me so tight when he scraped his knee, the boy who whispered, "I'll always take care of you, mama." I copied every file, printed every page, slid them carefully into a folder, and left the library, my steps slow, deliberate. I needed help, someone who knew how these things worked, so I went to see Mr. Howard, the lawyer who'd handled my husband's will years ago. His office still smelled like old books and lemon polish. He looked up when I walked in, surprised and kind as ever. He listened quietly while I spoke, his hands folded on the desk, the way people do when they're afraid their words might break something fragile. He said, "What she did is possible. Only if your power of attorney was misused or forged. Do you still have the papers?" I nodded, pulled out the folder, handed him everything. He read each page slow, his brow tightening with every line. Then he looked up and said softly, "She was clever, she knew what she was doing, but she made one mistake. The signature date doesn't match your travel dates, and that's what we'll use." I felt the smallest spark of warmth in my chest, not joy, not yet, but purpose. He said he'd start the process quietly to review the sale to file a claim, but he warned me it would take time and it might get messy. I told him messy doesn't scare me anymore. When I left his office, the sun had broken through the clouds, the light sharp, clean, honest. It felt like a sign that truth always finds its way even through the cracks. That evening I sat in the diner again, same corner, same table. I ordered tea this time. The waitress asked if I wanted pie. I said maybe later because I had something else to taste first. The slow satisfaction of a plan beginning to take shape. I opened my notebook and wrote down everything: dates, names, memories, the day I gave her the keys, the week I told them about my trip, every detail, a thread in the web I was spinning, not of hate but of truth, because sometimes the only revenge worth having is the one that doesn't need to be shouted. I thought of calling my son, then my hand hovered over the phone, but I didn't. I wanted him to hear from the world what kind of woman he had trusted more than his own mother. When night fell, I went back to the motel. I looked in the mirror and saw someone new, the same face, maybe older, more lined, but the eyes different, steadier. I whispered to my reflection, you've been quiet long enough. Tomorrow I would go see her face to face, not to beg, not to cry, but to listen, because people who lie always reveal themselves if you let them talk long enough. Morning came, slow gray light over the town, the kind that hides more than it shows. I stood outside their house, the one I helped them buy with a small loan years ago. They never paid it back, not really, but I never asked for it either. I just wanted to see them happy. I rang the bell once, twice, the sound echoing inside until the door opened, and there she was, hair perfect, smile rehearsed, eyes sharp enough to slice through kindness. She looked surprised but not guilty. That kind of calm only comes when someone believes they've already won. "Oh mother, you're back early," she said, voice sweet like syrup. "Left too long in the sun." I told her I had changed my plans, wanted to be closer to home. She asked if everything was all right, and I said not yet, but it will be. My son came from the hallway, half-buttoned shirt, half a smile on his face, the same boy who used to chase fireflies, now looking at me like I was the one who turned out the lights. I hugged him lightly and said I needed to talk somewhere quiet. He hesitated, glanced at her, then nodded. We sat in the kitchen, the smell of new paint and coffee filling the space. I said I stopped by my apartment yesterday. He froze his spoon midair. She looked down, pretending to wipe the counter. I asked him if he'd known about the sale. His eyes shifted the way truth does when it wants to hide behind love. "Mom, it was complicated." She started handling the bills. "When you traveled, we thought you wanted less stress," he said, the words falling apart before they even reached me. I placed the folder from Mr. Howard on the table, the one with the mismatched dates and her forged signature. She looked at it the way a thief looks at a mirror, and for a second her mask slipped. "Not much, just enough." I said, "You sold the only place that ever belonged to me, and you did it while calling me family." She opened her mouth to answer, but I raised my hand gently, not angry, just tired. I said, "I'm not here to fight, I'm here to listen, because I want to hear how far you'll go to bury yourself in your own lies." Silence stretched between us, long, heavy. My son's eyes darted from me to her, to the papers. He whispered, "You had no right to sign that." And her voice finally cracked. She said, "You were never going to use that apartment anyway. You have savings, you don't need it. I did it for us." For us, those words hit harder than any insult because they meant he'd let her speak for him. I stood up, slow, my chair scraping the tile. I said, "You took my home, but I still have something you can't sell, the truth, and tomorrow everyone in this town will see it." Her face went pale. She asked what I meant. I just smiled, the soft kind of smile that used to calm my son when he was small and afraid. I said, "Tomorrow's paper will tell them who bought, and who lied, and how the law doesn't sleep just because greed does." Then I walked out into the morning light again, the sky clearing, the wind cool and clean. The next morning broke quiet and gold, the town half awake, the streets still smelling of rain. I walked down Main Street, my coat buttoned, my heart steady, the way it only gets when the storm inside has already passed. I could feel eyes on me, people who had known me for years but never really seen me. Mr. Howard, the lawyer, met me at the courthouse steps, papers in hand, his voice calm but firm. He said, "It's all ready." I nodded, thanked him, and signed the last page, the one that would undo everything she'd done, not out of spite but out of justice. He said the sale was illegal, forged signatures, false identification. The apartment would be restored in my name, and the news would reach town by noon. I didn't smile, not yet. Some victories aren't loud, they're quiet, like a sigh after months of holding your breath. By the time I reached the cafe across from the hardware store, whispers had already started, folks leaning in, low voices carrying names, mine, hers, the story traveling faster than any train ever could. Around noon the headline went up on the local site. "Widow's home illegally sold by family member. Investigation underway." No names needed, everyone knew who we were. This town doesn't forget. I sat by the window, tea cooling beside me, and watched as she walked down the street, her steps small, her face pale, my son trailing behind, trying to talk, trying to fix what couldn't be hidden anymore. She looked through the glass, saw me sitting there, our eyes met, And for a long moment time didn't move. It was just two women on opposite sides of the truth, one who built everything from nothing, one who thought she could take it because she never knew how much it cost. She came inside slowly, the bell above the door trembling. I didn't speak first, I just looked at her the way you look at a stranger who used to live inside your family. She said she was sorry, that she didn't mean for it to go this far. I told her I believed her, but belief doesn't erase what's been done. I said, I'm not here to ruin you, I just wanted my home back. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Maybe real, maybe not, I said, but understand this home is not just walls, it's my life, it's everything I built, while you were still learning what love costs. My son tried to speak, but I stopped him gently. I said, I love you, always will, but love isn't a reason to stay blind. He lowered his head like a boy again, not a man who'd lost his compass. I stood up, paid for my tea, and told her quietly, what you took taught me something priceless. You reminded me that peace needs protection, and kindness without boundaries becomes weakness. Outside the cafe, the sky had shifted, light breaking through clouds. People watched. But I didn't care. I walked slow down the street, every step heavier and lighter at the same time. When I reached the edge of town, I turned one last time, the hills behind me glowing soft and real, my home waiting to be reclaimed, not just the building, but the life inside it, the dignity, the calm. That night I sat on my porch again, wind moving through the maple tree, the stars scattered thin across the dark. I whispered to the air, maybe forgiveness will come someday, but not before understanding. And for the first time in a long time I felt peace, not borrowed, not fragile, mine. Evening came soft and blue, the kind that turns everything half memory, half dream. I sat on the porch, the air smelled of rain, and would smoke. The world finally still again, the house behind me quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting to see if I would stay this time. My old apartment was mine again, papers signed, name restored, doors unlocked, and rooms waiting. I walked through it that afternoon, touching walls that had waited for me, dust thick on the windows, but sunlight finding its way through anyway, like forgiveness. I didn't change much, just opened the curtains, swept the floors, placed the picture back on the table, the one of my husband and son smiling wide on graduation day. It had been cracked once at the corner, now it was whole again, like us, maybe not perfect but standing. My son came that evening alone, his car pulling up slow. He didn't knock, just stood at the gate like he used to when he was little and nervous about something. I told him to come in. He did, his shoulders heavy, his eyes tired. He said, I didn't see it, I should have, I let her do too much. I thought it was love, I thought it was helping, and I said quietly, love isn't blindness, son, it's sight, clear and patient. He asked if I'd ever forgive her. I said, forgiveness isn't something I give like a gift, it's something time grows. If the soil is right, maybe one day, maybe not, but I'll try, because hate makes rooms colder and I've lived in enough cold houses already. He looked at me then and said he was proud of me, proud that I didn't let anyone take my dignity away. I smiled and told him I never lost it, I just let people borrow it too long. We sat together for hours, didn't talk much, the kind of silence that heals instead of hurts. The crickets started up, the sky turned dark, and somewhere down the street the church bell rang once, then twice. He asked if I'd ever sell this place again, and I said never, not this one, not the one built on memory and tears and lessons. He nodded, said he'd come by more often, that she was staying with her parents for a while. I said that's all right, sometimes space is what truth needs to breathe. Later, after he left, I walked through the rooms one last time, lights low, shadows long. My husband's chair still creaked the way it always did. I sat there watching the night crawl across the floor until it reached my feet, and I whispered, thank you for the strength, thank you for the lesson, thank you for teaching me that losing everything isn't the end, sometimes it's just how life makes room for peace. The wind outside picked up, carried the scent of maple leaves and rain, and for a moment I could almost hear his voice again, gentle, proud, saying you did good. And I smiled through the quiet, because maybe that's all I ever wanted to know. You know, life has a way of showing us who we are when the noise fades. When the house is empty and all that's left is the sound of your own breathing. That's when you learn what home really means. It's not the walls, it's not the things inside. It's the peace you build after they tried to break you. Sometimes love betrays you not out of hate but out of fear. And sometimes forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. So your heart can rest again. I used to think revenge was about winning. But it's not. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself they thought they could take. The apartment's mine again, but more than that. I'm mine again. And if you're listening out there, maybe you've lost something too. Someone too. Maybe they sold your trust, your time, your hope. Don't you worry. The truth always finds its way home. So wherever you are tonight, hold your head high. And remember this. You can't lose what was built from love. You can only lose what was borrowed by the wrong hands. Because sometimes, peace doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from finally being okay remembering. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories waiting on this porch. Stories of mothers and sons. Of love and loss and finding your way home again. Subscribe Heart Talks, where every story leaves a little light behind.